Let's call this a setback for the Commission on Elections. With only 117 days to go before the national and local elections in May, the poll body now has to start over with the printing of ballots, discarding 6 million ballots already printed over the last 2 weeks. And this is the first time in Philippine electoral history that a reprint is happening.
That's right. The Comelec has suspended first printing following the Supreme Court's temporary restraining order or TRO on the cases of 1 national candidate and 4 local bets. The poll body earlier declared as nuisance candidates senatorial aspirants Subair Guintum Mustafa and Charles Savellano, who is seeking a congressional seat in Ilocos Sur. The Comelec also canceled the certificates of candidacy of ITA leader Chito Bulatao Balintay, eyeing the gubernatorial post in Zambales, and Florendo de Ramos Ritualo Jr., who is running as Sangguniang Panglungsod member in the 1st District of San Juan City. Former Caloocan Representative Edgar Erice was likewise disqualified for allegedly spreading false and alarming information after he questioned the Comelec's contract with Miru Systems.
Now, the High Court ordered the reinstatement on the ballot of all 5 candidates. Now, that means Comelec has to make changes in the candidates' database and its election management system. A big challenge will be tweaking the order by which the names of candidates appear on the ballot, with the numbering apparently affected by the revisions. The poll body has to print a total of 73 million ballots for the May 12 elections.
So what will the suspension of ballot printing do to the election schedule? There's only one body that could answer that. So let's bring in Comelec spokesperson Rex Laudiangco, who joins us now over the phone. Welcome back to The Big Story, Attorney Laudiangco.
Magandang gabi po, Ma'am Regina, Ma'am Pauline, and Ma'am Sean, and good evening to all the viewers of The Big Story.
Good evening, and thanks so much for making time out for us. First off, 6 million ballots, is that correct? What is the exact number we're talking about that have to be reprinted?
Okay, that's correct. 6 million ballots, and it accounts for the ballots of the overseas voters, wherein we'll be using elections using the system, the automated counting machines, because the internet voting is not allowed in those jurisdictions. We also have 100,000 ballots for the local absentee voting, 1.4 million ballots for the final testing and sealing, an equal number of ballots for the mock elections, as well as the training of the electoral boards and deputy support officers. We also have printed the national and local election ballots for the BARM, as well as the Caraga, and as well as the BARM parliamentary ballots. All of these ballots were already printed and stationary at our national printing office.
So all of those total 6 million ballots, overseas voters, BARM elections, national elections in BARM, et cetera, all of these total 6 million, is that correct?
That is correct. More or less 6 million.
Okay.
The inventory is ongoing since this morning.
And do you have an estimate of how much this will cost, both in terms of the losses, in terms of the ballots that you have to discard now, and also the reprints? Do you have an estimate of how much all of that will cost?
An initial estimate yields around more or less around 130 to 150 million pesos, accounted by 22 pesos per ballot. And including the services for the printing of the National Printing Office personnel, their overtime pay, as well as the supplies, the ballot paper and other toners. We have yet to account the cost of the reprinting of this ballot come the time that we're already prepared with a new set of ballot paper templates.
Okay, what concerns...
130 to 150 million only accounts for the losses. It doesn't yet account for the reprinting at this point?
That is correct, because we really have to reprint all the 6 million ballots to be able to give all these affected voters the respective ballots.
Okay, another concern, no, Attorney Rex, is that these ballots that you are... I forgot my question, actually, but go ahead.
So let me just follow through with the money question. Do we have the budget? Do you have the budget for all of this additional costs that clearly you had not accounted for at the start?
That is correct. This is something new for us. You know, the Comelec Finance Department is already assessing our budget. Indeed, we will be needing to use our savings if there are any. And if these savings are not enough, we really have to go to Congress for supplemental appropriations in order to carry through with the reprinting of the 6 million ballots.
Okay, now I remember my question. I was concerned about where you would get the additional money. And on top of that, because this has never happened before, I was wondering whether there are kind of like guidelines on what will happen in case, ballot printing has been suspended at any point in the process. Is there some sort of precedent we can look at or some guidelines?
Comelec is prepared for this. We have a contingency plan in place, and that's why immediately upon receiving news and confirming from the Supreme Court website of the temporary restraining orders issued, even before receiving our formal copy, we had immediately suspended the printing of the ballots and tasked our information technology group to update, to change and amend the database. And then in the following days, including today, we are now amending and changing the election management system. Come tomorrow, we'll be starting with the amendment and changes to the automated counting machine and the consolidation and canvassing system with the hope that if a new certification is needed, we will be able to do that by Saturday or Monday, so that after the certification, we could generate the new ballot paste templates, put it up on our website, serialize it, and then and only then can we begin the printing of the ballots. We have to start again with the ballots that I have enumerated, because these are the first ones to be printed in order for them to be deployed first. As you could see, the first ballots that we print are those farthest to be deployed and had to get out of the Comelec warehouse the soonest.
You said you're going to have to fall back on the savings first, and then if that's not enough, you go back to Congress to ask for more money. How much in savings does the Comelec have at this point?
Right now, I don't have the figure for savings, because the savings come from the savings from the procurement, the bidding. Those are because we're getting the lowest prices. The savings or the leftover from the approved budget from the contract cannot be considered as savings of the Comelec.
All right, Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, but so far this is just a temporary restraining order granted on these candidates. But if the Supreme Court grants in favor of Comelec in terms of the disqualification, what will that do to the ballots?
Will not be changing anymore the ballots. We don't need to take out their names. It only takes an order coming from the Comelec implementing the decision of the Supreme Court in case that these persons are really disqualified. All we had to do is declare all the votes that they have garnered as stray, and even if they win, these votes will not be counted and they will not be proclaimed.
Is that automatically implied in the Supreme Court decision, Attorney?
That it already happened before, that a person who was able to secure a temporary restraining order was ultimately disqualified. What Comelec do in this case is that we consider these votes as stray. This is also the same situation in cases where a candidate supposedly had to be taken out but was left in a ballot, in case of cancellation of COC, in cases of Lewison's candidate, and in cases of disqualification. If they still are in the ballot and they do get votes, and even if they win, we declare these votes as stray, and we will not be proclaiming these candidates.
Yesterday, we were talking to former Ilocos Sur Governor Chavit Singson, who, as you might know, has withdrawn from the senatorial race, although I don't think he's made it official yet. So if the Supreme Court upholds the ruling, does that mean you get a chance to take his name out of the ballot as well?
It depends on when Mr. Singson will be personally submitting his affidavit of withdrawal. Comelec rules or certificates of candidacy requires the personal appearance and personal submission of an affidavit of withdrawal. The only instance that will be allowing a withdrawal of a candidacy when the person himself is not being present is in case of medical incapacity. In that case, the representative has to bring a doctor certification that indeed the original candidate is medically incapacitated to appear before Comelec.
While we're on the subject, Attorney Rex, there are two other candidates off the top of my head. That's Lino Cayetano from Taguig, as well as from Marikina, Marcy Teodoro. They have also some issues with the residency jurisdiction. What's going to happen to these cases, and their names on the ballots? Are the timings going to coincide with the reprint, etc.?
As of now, their names are still in the ballots and even in the ballot paste templates because their cases have yet to be decided by the commission. That's why they are still in the official ballot.
And
Sorry, what do you mean the Comelec has yet to decide? I thought Comelec has rejected the residency transfer petition by Lino Cayetano.
That is correct, but they have filed their respective motions for reconsideration, and these MRs are still pending before the Commission and Bank.
Oh, I see. So the en banc has to decide on that. Any idea when that might happen?
I don't have the timeline, and I cannot say for sure when these decisions will be coming out. But as of this moment, their names remain to be in the ballot because their cases are still pending with the Commission and Bank.
Right. So like you said earlier, whether or not what happens to these cases, then their names and the votes that they gather will be declared as strays if, for example, the on-bank decides to disqualify them.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay.
That is correct. And the decision of the Commission and Bank becomes final and executory.
So with that, Attorney, are you aware of any other cases pending that could still be included in the ballots that you haven't included yet in the printing? I mean, now that you will be reprinting all these 6 million ballots, could there be, kumbaga, pahabol pa na mga kandidato, kumbaga, if their TROs are also granted by the Supreme Court?
That is also a possibility because we know for a fact that there are several cases also and still pending with the Supreme Court, and we don't know what will be the disposition of these cases. Will the Supreme Court issue another round of temporary restraining order? And if that happens, again, we have to restart the process. We're going back to zero because every time there's a change, we really have to change the whole system from the program to the ballot-based templates, including those programs installed in the automated counting machines. And in fact, the ballot printing is at the back end of all these processes.
Just a question, Attorney Rex. To put it simply, what's the deadliest deadline for the restart of the printing process for us to be able to make it without a hitch to the midterms?
Okay, although I don't have the exact date, but we really have to be finished with the printing of the official ballots by the first week of April because the deployment will actually start by the last week of March. So if any delay in the printing of ballots comes after this, and if we go beyond the April 4 deadline, what will suffer is the deployment of these ballots and other machines and other paraphernalia. As we all know, when we deploy all this, we deploy them in kits, we deploy them in bundles, so that those who the receiving electoral boards, the voting centers, will be receiving them as a whole. So that is the dangerous part. It's not actually the production part, but the deployment part, which will suffer most in these cases. And if a deployment will not push through, then you know what will happen. There will be a delay in the conduct of elections.
You also mentioned earlier, after the first question of Reg, that some of these 6 million ballots are supposed to be used for mock elections and training. Are those also going to be affected by the lack of, the quote-unquote legit ballot for 2025 midterms? Or can those be conducted still with something else?
You know, the mock elections is dependent first on the certification of the election management system, the automated counting machine, and the consolidation and counting system. The mock election is not a requirement simply of Comelec. It's a requirement of Republic Act 9369. It's a precursor and a requirement for the certification of the whole automated election system. That is why we really have to conduct it. What we did was to push back the date instead of doing it this Saturday on January 18. We're hoping that if we were able to finish with all the programs, we will be able to print the mock election ballots first so that we could proceed with it on January 25, and then we'll be proceeding with the printing of the other ballots onward.